They hastened through the abandoned streets amidst the darkness. The sky was still clouded, concealing the moon and stars, but it wasn't raining at the moment. Wilbur was in the lead in her wolf form. Luther followed close behind with the Kuluk. None of them had problems to see, being supernatural creatures of the night. Many streets and alleys flew by as they made for the other end of the city's outskirts, where houses and streets yielded to pompous estates and vast gardens. Luther stopped them when they were close to an immense country house surrounded by at least 1 acre of land. Tall hedges and old trees surrounded the building. Plants of various forms and color added to the magnificence. The house itself harbored 3 stories with several white-paned windows. Some of them were close to the ground, hinting at a 4th story below the surface. Only one of the 4 chimneys showed smoke, and the deep red-brown color gave it a warm but royal tone. Vine and ivy ranks covered a good deal of the building, and more flowers surrounded the house in neatly arranged flower beds. Luther gave them a sign, and they circled the building to get a look at the front. 2 large doors enabled entrance, and a wall as high as a man surrounded the front garden, which was graced with geometrically arranged white cedar, circling a fountain. It was an expensive-looking work of art made of marble and engraved with many ornaments. Wilbur sniffed the air repeatedly before announcing, "No humans." "You can speak in this form?" the demon asked when he heard the growled resemblance of human speech. "Lot effort, but possible. Use little words." "I don't like this," Luther muttered under his breath as he fixed the estate. He had grown tense, grinding his teeth while thinking. Both the Kuluk and Wolper looked at the vampire for instruction. "Should we turn back?" the demon suggested, despite the dislike he felt for turning away now. Luther shook his head very slightly, his penetrating gaze never moving from the target in front of them. "No. Blackwood is a discreet man. I haven't managed to get any information for weeks. If we wait even longer, Atsushi might—" He left the sentence unfinished. The vampire seemed to feel responsible for his friend's fate, showing his human side once again. He hadn't asked Ukuluk about the reason for why he was looking for Raphaelin, but the open display of his emotion led the demon believe that Luther might have a good guess about what was going on with him and the angel. Otherwise, he wouldn't trust the demon like that. "We've got to move. We'll approach from the back." Sneaking to the back of the estate, they approached through the garden, always keeping close to the shadows. They would spot a guard quicker due to their improved sight, but Luther was a careful soul. He made it clear that he didn't want more trouble than necessary, and having no intention to harm anyone, Ukuluk didn't mind. They found a small wooden door, probably the entrance maids and servants used for garbage and such. The vampire pushed softly, whereupon the door swung open without a sound. "Open. Convenient," Wilbur remarked with a suspicious glow of her eyes. "Very convenient indeed," Luther agreed. He stood frozen in place for a moment, weighing, listening. The demon felt a gush of cold, sinister air come from the darkness inside. He felt his hair stand up in alarm. A glance at the 2 friends told him they felt the strange aura as well. If Luther was unsettled, then he didn't show it. His red eyes only stared into the dark, like they had when he had gazed at the estate half an hour ago. Taking a deep breath, he went ahead. Wilbur followed without hesitating. So did Ukuluk. The first room was indeed the kitchen. Vast and in an ancient style, the room was big enough to let 5 people work at once. Knives hung on the wall, ready to be used, and pans and pots were stacked on top of each other. Jars filled with spices, sacks of flour, and potatoes. It looked as if Blackwood wasn't very fond of the outside world. Why else would he have everything one needed bunkered at home in such amounts? They opened the kitchen door as carefully as the one leading outside. But this time a long creaking sound echoed through the hallway as if the wood cried in agony. The three kept still and waited even after the noise had stopped. No one came. A wealthy estate like that was easy prey to robbers. There should be guards somewhere, yet nothing but dark silence greeted them, together with the same unsettling feeling that resided in that building like a heavy blanket. The demon realized that the thick air made it difficult to breathe. Again, Luther went ahead, brushing off the warning signs of danger. Their footsteps were muffled by the carpet. The occasional moonlight shone through the window where the curtain was left open. The pale light gave the place an otherworldly feeling. They found a flight of stairs leading to the next story. The vampire looked and thought, but eventually decided that his friend wouldn't be in the friendly part of the building. When they passed two large doors, of which one stood slightly ajar, Luther took a peek inside. It was a library. One book was lying on the table next to a feather and ink. Blackwood was keeping record of his experiments and breakthroughs. Physiology was the title of the page, followed by detailed explanations and sketches. Occult saw the drawing of long fangs and a humanoid intestinal system. It only was a rough outlining. It seemed Blackwood was dissecting his specimen at one point. Luther, who had put his hand on the pages, swiftly drew back when he realized what species the book was dedicated to. The red eyes showed uneasiness when they locked with the demon's green ones. "That sick bastard," the vampire only muttered. His voice, a mixture of dread and anger, caused Wilper to utter a low whining noise. A closed book on werewolves was lying on the ground next to the table. "Luther, this is no coincidence. I think he knows who you two are. I think he aimed to catch you." The demon voiced his thoughts in a hushed tone. "I know," was the vampire's only response. "You know?" Occult echoed, still not quite sure if he understood. Wilper seemed equally surprised, casting her friend a questioning look. "I was with Atsushi when he was captured. They headed out for me, but the old fox pushed me into the shadows and told me to be still." "Luther, why?" Wilper asked in her fragmented speech, but Luther seemed to understand. "I couldn't tell you. It was my fault I took him. How could I possibly go on leading us when I couldn't protect him?" Kuluk was still awkward when it came to those emotions, but he felt the need to do something. Putting his hand on the vampire's shoulder, he hoped to do the right thing. Luther turned to look at the demon. Kuluk didn't know what the vampire saw in the demon's face. He himself was confused by his fear for Raphaelin as well as the empathy he felt towards those two new souls he'd met. The red eyes showed a hint of anger, which dissipated quickly. Kuluk just wanted them to know that he was there. And Luther seemed to realize the goodwill. Returning the gesture, he put his hand on the demon's shoulder and nodded. He had turned to leave the room when they heard a strange animalistic sound that went even Kuluk to marrow and bone. At once they exited the library to face the threat or make for safety. What came next was too quick even for the demon to register. Something hit Luther with enough force to catapult him through the window behind. Shattering the glass, their friend hit the ground, remaining still. "Luther!" Wilper followed through the window, leaving the demon alone in the hallway. Out from the shadows, casually strolling, came the creature. It was humanoid, but not human. Not even human-like. Its head was a skull with eyes deep in the sockets, making them look like the ones of a moray eel peering out of the dark the whole time. The torso was tall, very tall compared to the size of the whole body. The creature was draped in some kind of ragged cloth, concealing even the mouth, and from its shoulders and neck protruded spikes upwards like spears, several inches long. It fixed the demon with its stare, still walking in that inhuman way. When it came close enough, Occult could see that it didn't walk. It slithered, like a snake. The arms hung lifelessly downward as it approached, but the demon was sure they were dangerous tools. Still, the unsettling gaze did not waver. There was no hostility coming from the creature, no hate, no hunger. There was only that firm stare as if there was a mission it had to fulfill. The creature was still closing in when the demon suddenly felt something pierce his stomach. He felt his heart race as he looked down to see a fleshy tongue buried in his body. He could feel it burrow inside, looking for something to tear out. Forcing his eyes back to the creature, he saw how a gaping mouth had opened in the middle of the torso. Sharp, shark-like teeth reflected the moonlight, and above the mouth he saw a reddish glowing sphere embedded in the body, not much larger than his own palm. He felt the tongue buried deeper into his intestines, causing him to taste blood. With both hands he gripped the thing, trying to pull it out. He didn't know exactly how, but the next moment Wilper was there to bite down on the tongue and claw at it. Blood ran red and a high-pitched scream sounded. Okuluk felt the tongue pull back as the scream threatened to explode his ears due to the high frequency. Wilper only bit his hand, causing him to snap out of it, and dragged him through the window. Already the tongue followed, the wounds closed and gone. Luther was covering the two, shooting at the thing with all he got. "What kind of demon is that?" he yelled as the bullets showed no effect. "It's not a demon," Okuluk stuttered as he fought to remove his frozen body. "It's something entirely else. Dark, twisted chaos. Wherever he captured it, it must have been a place of doom and terror. I feel bloodthirst. Leave, Luther. Leave now." "Go ahead, I'll come," the vampire ordered, whereupon the werewolf kept dragging Okuluk, whose legs started to falter from the wound. A blood-curdling scream made the demon's heart stop. Turning around, he saw how the creature had just torn Luther's right arm from the body with its one claw. The other held the vampire by the head like a puppet. Black blood started to cover the grassy ground. He could see the shock clearly on Wilper's wolf face. Not thinking, the demon sprinted back despite his weakness. Just in time, he jumped at the creature, clinging to its free arm to prevent it from tearing the vampire into more parts. There was still hope. As long as the heart was intact, Luther could regenerate. Annoyed by the pesky parasite that wouldn't let go, with shaking and thrusting, the creature hurled Luther away. It was a small victory, followed by its other claw burying itself in Okuluk's shoulder. He bit down when he heard the twisting sound and felt how the steely claws met his joint. He saw Wilper attack, but the creature unleashed its tongue towards the wolf. She would be next. Luther still struggled to his feet. The vampire was pale and bloody. Acting on instinct, the demon spread his wings. The additional extremities obscured the creature's view, forcing the tongue to miss its target. "Run, Wilper! I will follow!" "But, Luther! Trust me!" the demon shouted as the claw tore free from his shoulder. His whole body was on fire. Letting go of the creature, he hit the ground with his back. The impact pressed the air out of his lungs, yet he forced himself up. Wilper had listened. She was making for the estate's border. The demon could only hope that his assumption was right. He stumbled towards the vampire, who tried to cling to life. The creature looked at Wilper's vanishing figure and then at the two closer victims. Okuluk knew what it would choose. It was a hunter after all. Something strange happened when the demon looked at the creature, and his gaze was distracted by a basement window far behind it. His mind reeled when he heard Enochian voices and saw a white glow. Light garments waved in the wind, and a soft giggling filled his ears. It was peaceful. It was heavenly. Luther's desperate voice brought the demon back to reality. "Come on, Pa!" The creature was threateningly near when Okuluk took in his surroundings anew. Its gaze resting on him once again with that eerie certainty of his death. "Let's hope I can carry you," the demon uttered upon spreading his wings to lift them into the air. The creature was stunned when it saw how quick they were on wings. It didn't last long, however, until their attacker gave chase. Occult was only a few feet in front of his death, yet he was faster nonetheless. Right before they crossed the border, the creature managed to land a deep scratch on one of the demon's wings. He held the steady flight that let them soar despite the pain, and he kept holding it until they crashed to the ground behind the border. His arms trembled from the exhaustion, and his wing burned where long wounds split the grey flesh and a few feathers. The creature uttered its deeper, animalistic scream once again in frustration. Out of some unknown reason it couldn't follow. It had been the demon's guess, since a rampaging monster would be a problem to Blackwood as well as to the city. Occult took off his shirt and wrapped it around the vampire's bleeding wound, fixating it with his suspenders. He didn't want to find out how much blood a vampire had to lose in order to die. He felt Wilper's compassionate gaze when she saw the full extent of his fresh wound still bleeding. "Scar," the wolf remarked. Occult knew what she meant. A thick scar covered his chest where an angel had once narrowly missed his heart. "It's fine," he muttered absent-mindedly, still stopping the bleeding to his best ability. He was trying to heal the vampire, but his skills weren't enough for large organisms, it seemed. Luther had fallen unconscious. The demon knew what their friend needed. Blood was the only boost for regeneration amongst vampires. "Carry," Wilper spoke, offering her back. It astonished him how she could be strong enough to carry a grown man, even if she wasn't much larger than an ordinary wolf and of slender build. He held the unconscious one with one hand to prevent the body from sliding down due to the imbalance of the still oozing wound and the missing limb. He cast one last glance backwards. Like a bad dream, the creature was gone.